Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is September 8th, and this is another of our bi-weekly SIG CLI calls. My name is Maciej, and I'll be your host today. Our agenda is fully packed with topics, so let's quickly jump into the announcements. The most important and pressing one is that the cap freeze is tomorrow. I linked there the dates for 123 release. So if you're working on a cap, make sure to have it ready and tagged by tomorrow, late afternoon Pacific time. If I remember correctly, that was what we've been using in the past. I'm pretty sure that the release team will be looking carefully. Although looking currently at the dates, it only is the date. But it's usually, oh, there is. Enhancement freeze. It's midnight Pacific time. So that buys me time all the way until Friday morning, actually. But that's just me. Okay, Eddie, Sean, any other announcements that we should call out?
Nope, got nothing.
Oh, there's one announcement. If you are planning to go to the Contributor Summit in person or online, make sure you register because I think attendance is a little low and they're considering changing it somehow. So.
Okie doke. Let's move on to the introductions. Do we have anyone new on this call? If so, feel free to speak up right now. This is your time. Say who you are, what you're looking for, why you join our call. You know, just say hi.
I'll say hi. I'm Carl from Google, a solution architect at Google, and I was looking at contributing to CLI utils. So just wanted to hang out and see what was going on.
Welcome. Do we have anyone else? Or the rest looks like there are old folks that have been with us for quite a while. Scrolling through the participant list. Last call. Okay, hearing none, let's move on to the main section. So the topics. Eddie, want to take it away from here?
Yeah, so we had this on the agenda and we canceled last meeting. So this isn't quite as relevant because cap freeze is tomorrow, but I believe the extension period is longer than the opt-in period. So please get your caps in tomorrow, but if there are any that won't make tomorrow, we have a generous extension period, I believe, so.
From what I remember for 123, personally putting on the enhancement list, there are two topics. The kubectl events is something that I've been pushing for quite a while, and I'm hoping that 123 will be the time when we get that one pushed over. I reached out to Nikita and Yaraf, if I remember correctly his name, about the sub resource. Because the only thing that I wanted from them was to have an update to the latest milestone in their cap. Other than that, that is ready to go. I haven't heard back. I do hope I'll try pinging Nikita tomorrow morning, when it will be more time wise for her, and I'll see if we can get that one going. There's still kubectl debug profiles kept from Lee that I'll be looking at later today. We're hoping that that one will still be will be able to be included in 123. I already synced with him quickly, and I promised him to have a look at the cap today. And in the worst case, we'll be talking tomorrow morning about last bits for the cap itself. And if I remember correctly, those will be the only three that I'm aware of right away.
I was hoping that we could get the delete cap in, but it seems like it's stalled again. I had a good call with Tim Hawken, and we brainstormed a bunch of different ideas. So if you haven't seen that email yet, go check it out on the KDev mailing list.
Definitely. The delete is one of the topics that is on my list since Monday, and it's Wednesday already, and the time flies by, and I'm still missing a lot of stuff. Okie doke. Anyone else have any topics that I want to call out for 123 that requires our, as in Sean, Eddie, or myself's immediate attention for a 123 deadline? Okay, hearing none. Eddie, you're up next again for kubectl run.
So this was a issue filed by a user, and he is unable to use a overrides to set the limits in a run pod type thing. The issue is that we require image as a mandatory flag, but the way that the JSON 7396 RFC merge stipulates is that if the patch is anything other than an object, the result will always be to replace the entire target with the entire patch. Also, it is not possible to patch part of a target that is not an object, such as to replace some of the values in an array. And so the issue here is this user is trying to merge in their limits for resources into the containers, which is an array. So it actually blows away the image flag that they specify. So the only way for this to work is for them to actually specify the image in their JSON patch, and anything else that is like set by default or otherwise. So it's kind of like an unfortunate situation. Any thoughts on that? I can explain more if that doesn't make sense.
Do we know the history of why this particular patch type is being used instead of the strategic merge patch that would work as expected?
This was, when was overrides introduced?
I would probably check when the overrides were introduced, but my first reaction was pretty much similar to Katrina's, as in, let's try to figure out to a patch that will be much more flexible than the current one. It seems somehow more reasonable, especially that we're pushing a lot of folks away by not adding additional flags, but showing them that they should be using overrides instead. I'm guessing that the reason that why we picked originally the current patch it was because that one was the simplest one and the first implemented, and nobody changed it since then. That would be my first gut feeling, and probably we would have to double check with the code. Something tells me that that might be the case.
Yeah, so this was, overrides was introduced in the PR I linked, but it did not introduce the building of the overrides, it just added the flag. So the building is this create generated object, which I don't know when that was added. I don't know where
Yeah,
else that's used.
Yeah, we would have to double check.
But is that our thing? Are we okay with looking into swapping that to the other JSON patch thing?
Yeah, I think that seems the most reasonable, because that would basically mean we would come forward towards users. I wonder My only worry would be backwards compatibility, whether the strategic merge patch would or could work in somewhat.
I think we can identify it because I think the 6902 has like an ops key.
Yeah.
So I think that's easy to identify that one. So we should be able to maintain it.
So if that's doable, then that's probably what I would suggest us doing. In the worst case, I would be even inclined to specify the name of the merge type as the first, as the prefix from the actual contents. Alternately, introducing a new flag, which would say which merge type, and by default, we would pick the current one.
More flags.
Yeah, but only one, and then rather a general usage one.
No, I get you. I would like to see these commands go away at some point, but I know that's never going to happen.
Which one, the kubectl run or?
Run. Yeah. Create. It's like Jordan said a while ago, like representing structured information via flags is just no bueno. Like it's really hard to maintain.
Well, that nicely reminds me the question of how is your work towards having a generic create command off of OpenAPI?
It is stalled. Can pick that back up. I was working with Kevin Weissmuller for the working group expression. He did have a KEP to add examples to OpenAPI, and I think that was stalled. I actually think it just got marked stale, so I'll go bump that and we can pick that work back up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already getting complaints about removing the majority of the run functionality. The main reason for run was to have a similar user experience to what Docker or Podman or other container engines do to run something simple in a platform. But I'm guessing it'll take a significantly longer time to switch people from run and create towards something more like generation type of a thing.
Yeah, and this person, they do have a valid use case, and I understand why they're doing it. They said, we leverage this feature to give our learners proof of implementation style tests. Example, to show that your network policies are in place, spin up a one-time shell in the namespace, and then execute a command to see the results. So.
There's a second problem highlighted in this issue, much more minor, obviously, but the flag is claiming that it doesn't work, but it actually does work, and there are a couple that are like that according to the issue.
Yes, thank you. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we should make it not work if we mark them as deprecated. Must have missed that one when.
So the wording is that. I'll get you the wording that confused people. It says that this is deprecated and has no effect and will be removed in the future.
Yeah,
so do we want to just remove that has no effect piece?
I would remove the has effect piece so that the statement is correct with the wording, especially that the wording is out there since, if I remember correctly, past release. I think that
Actually remove the feature, backing it.
I think that merged in
So-
121 even.
So one other quick thing I wanted to note is we have our facts, the frequently asked questions that are, typical problems. And I'd like to see a fact, if we don't already have one, that basically points to apply as being the command that we suggest for creating objects. And so this won't solve this particular problem, but I think that if part of the problem is people don't understand that we are really, we would much rather see apply to actuate resources in the API server than run or create, then at least we could point to that as a fact and say, also, did you realize apply is the best practice for creating objects at the API server?
Right. Although the most important distinction between apply and create or run is that the latter are basing all their knowledge on the flags. Apply works only
Declaratively,
on, yeah, you need to have a fully fully created file first to be able to create, whereas run and create commands, and I'm talking create subcommands maybe to be more specific, because create, the row create where you pass a file name would be and should be replaced by the apply usage in 99% of cases. But for the subcommands and run, the case is you're getting that generated. But if we move forward with the eddies generation command, where we would have an alternative way of generating the file and then tweaking them manually, in that case, the generate with an apply would be the recommended approach.
Yeah, I think a lot of our documentation uses run because it's just so simple to get something in the API server. And so I think that there may be some confusion that that's actually what's recommended, when in fact it's basically a toy.
Yeah, pretty much so. Okay, I think we beat the topic to the death.
Let's say the action item. So action item, I will PR removing that confusing wording about has no effect. And then we will investigate doing a 6902 patch there.
Hold on. The action item would be to not remove the wording, to remove the actual changes, because the flag is deprecated. So I would prefer the wording be accurate with what's going on, because we will be removing the functionality.
Right, I'm saying specifically we remove the has no effect piece.
No. I was more leaning towards actually remove the functionality so that the wording is correct with the deprecation, because the deprecation warning is there since 121, so for at least 2 releases. So I would remove the actual functionality, because we will be removing the flag in maybe not 24, but probably 25, depending on, I would have to check the dates, but basically it's 3 releases or 1 year, whichever is longer. So probably 24 will match both of the dates. So we will be dropping this. So at 23 would be a good place for us to actually implement that does not add, that doesn't do anything.
Okay, I understand. We will remove the actual functionality, but keep the flag as it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Is anyone interested in working on that JSON patching? That might be a good issue for someone to pick up if they are.
What was the decision there to change it to use strategic merge patch, or was it to add a prefix that would to the content that would say which type?
Probably whoever implements it gets to decide which one it should be.
Yeah. whichever is easier, whether a separate flag allowing you to specify which patch type, or a prefix. Somehow I'm leaning towards separate flag because that's just simpler. And then make it explicit in the doc that you can specify a different patch type, but you need to set this flag explicitly.
Yeah, unless somebody else wants it, I don't mind.
Brian, your mic volume went down again to 1.
Okay, I can take that one.
Okay. Thank you.
Okie doke. Katrina, you're up next. Adding CI field to TLS secret.
Yeah, this is a pull request that I was tagged on for review a while ago. I think Eddie was also involved in this one, if I remember correctly.
Katrina, can you bump your volume? I think you're you're falling into the same trap as we did before.
Can you hear me better now?
Barely still.
Okay. Move my mic, maybe that will help.
No. In the Zoom settings, in the audio pane, there's a checkbox below your mic setting, which says automatically adjust the microphone volume.
Yeah, I unchecked that and maxed out the manual adjustment. So now I'm moving my mic closer to my face. Did that help?
Okay, I can hear you fine, so I'll probably go with this as is.
Okay. Right. So this issue wants to add the option for kubectl to set the CA field in a TLS secret. And my main question about that is that TLS secret is documented as having certain specific fields. There's built-in validations on the 2 fields that it has documented today because both are required. This CA field appears to be fairly widely used, mostly not in first-party things, but fairly widely used in Ingress, for example. You can have arbitrary fields in secrets, so it's not like this is inherently canonical. So the question for me here was like, if we add a flag to kubectl to make it support this field, then we're de facto making that a canonical field of the TLS secret type. So I was wondering if there's anything we needed to do in advance of taking that step. Eddie brought up the fact that we would probably make a constant to reflect that that's just in the code, but that seems like a very small detail. We'd probably adjust the documentation as well, I imagine, to reflect that. But is there any sort of process we need to follow or other SIG that we need to consult in order to officially choose that? I also, if you go to my comment on the PR, I found the original TLS secret creation PR that was discussing a field similar to this, and they had a few different names for it.
I remember having that PR on my list for reviews. In general, I think we were okay with this implementation.
Yeah, it's not an implementation question. It's like a strategic question, I guess. Like this is making a field that's used in the third-party ecosystem official in Kubernetes core by like just doing that de facto by supporting the flag that would write it.
I need to have a look at the PR itself, where specifically we're touching this. I'm guessing SIG API machinery because that's most likely touching the secret CA would be the primary people to double check this one on a field base level. Other than that, I think, yeah. alternatively, SIG auth might have a saying in it. So knowing live, pinging Jordan because he sits in both of these seems a reasonable action item on it. He will know from both ways, from the SIG auth and SIG API machinery and API itself point of view.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel really bad for this PR author. They've just been sitting for a while. So that's on me. I should have bumped in Jordan or Daniel earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all busy people. That's basically how.
Katrina, are you going to pull Jordan in, or do you want me to?
Doesn't matter to me. I can do it if you like.
Okay, you do it, please.
Okay.
And Katrina and Jeremy, although oh yeah, there's Jeremy. Two related customized caps. You want to talk about them?
This is something that I'm really excited about. We have two caps that are both loosely around Customize's plugin story. Right now, Customize has a whole bunch of different alphas for using plugins, and the other one, not the one that's up on the screen right now, has a bunch of history about what these different mechanisms are and how they work or don't work today. Some of them are available in kubectl and some of them are not. So the overarching proposal is sort of giving that background and explaining a path forward that would allow us to have one unified plugin story that we'd feel comfortable promoting for folks, and that Customize itself could even potentially use. And significantly, and the reason for including it in the enhancements repo, even though this doesn't follow the release cycle, is that we would like to propose something that folks feel comfortable including in kubectl someday once it graduates. So we want to make sure that we have buy-in on the long-term plan, even though certainly it will go through alpha. That will be in Customize standalone, so it's not going to show up in kubectl tomorrow or anything. But we want to make sure that the plan that we have will be acceptable in kubectl someday. So there's the one cap that's the overarching proposal, and then the catalog cap, which I believe is 20, the one on the left tab. That one goes into a lot more detail about a key piece of the proposal that is on its own a very powerful feature for customized plugins. So that one's Jeremy's. I'll let Jeremy say a few words about that.
Sure. This is kind of based off of some work we've been doing on an internal prototyping tool, but it's really a way of facilitating discovery and distribution of plugins, both for containerized things, but also looking towards how we might also support things like exec plugins for places where you might not be able to run containers. And I think that it's interesting because it allows us to provide a mechanism where we can build kind of an ecosystem of plugins for folks, and those can be extensible. Enterprises can build their own, kind of curated set of these things, but also it allows us to look at Customize and say, maybe there are some things that are built-ins now that maybe should be moved to external plugins to kind of shrink the surface of Customize and dependencies, make it a little simpler, make these things more of an externalized thing, and maybe develop official plugins, official extensions that can go along with Customize. So there's actually a lot of comments in here. I'm working on like round 2 of the update to the CAP based off of a lot of interaction we've had with people from the CAPS team. So definitely, as you're reading through this, take a look at the comments that are there. Hopefully today I'll push an update with a lot of the addressing some of the comments that have been pushed through so far. But like at a really high level, it's defining a new resource that essentially is an enumeration of plugins that can be consumed with identifying information, like where they're at, additional metadata, and then some additional things like for executable plugins, maybe what platform, what architecture, verification SHAs that can go along with that. And then it also takes a look at maybe what it looks like to store these things as OCI artifacts as a extra cherry on top.
And as Jeremy was saying, this would solve problems not only for people who want functionality from Kustomize that it doesn't offer today and that we can't really build in, but Kustomize has some issues with functionality that it already builds in or has built in the past and has had to remove because of the type restriction on dependencies that are introduced to kubectl. For example, the Helm feature, there was a HashiCorp URL go-getter feature that enabled a bunch of different remote URLs, and the Starlark runtime for functions. All three of those things are problematic and could be provided more easily as third-party, especially the former two plugins, or as built-ins that aren't compiled into Kustomize that are provided through some sort of official catalog. That's actually doing that is out of scope of the KEP, but I think it's a powerful possibility that it also inherently introduces. Another thing that's of note, Jeremy mentioned that we were getting some good feedback from the KEP folks, like KPT. Sounds like KEP when I say it like KEP, so just to clarify. And anyone who is working with the configuration function specification, which is detailed in the Kustomize repo and followed by both KML and Kustomize transformers and KEP, it could be interested in this proposal because it is based around it. Like both of these proposals, in fact, the proposal for plugin graduation story is proposing consolidating on the functions specifications, on the plugins that follow the function specification, because I think we're going to get the most leverage there, and they have a lot of benefits as well in terms of how they work and their ability to work with this idea of a catalog. So any folks that are interested in Kustomize, in extending Kustomize, in the function specification, or in extensibility patterns in general might be interested in both of these KEPs, and we really look forward to getting your feedback.
There was a question in chat from Carl. Why were those dependencies problematic to import? I think going back to the URL getter and stuff.
It's the size of them. If I had to identify one overarching reason, a bunch of those, yeah, it's staging. There are different problems with different dependencies. The ones that I mentioned, in particular, like the HashiCorp getter, if I remember correctly, and also Helm, they have they import a lot. Like to bring in that piece of functionality, you have to get a lot more than you would expect in terms of the code that you're bringing in, and just the volume and some of the details in particular are problematic for inclusion in a tool like kubectl. We just don't want to bring all of that in. So right now they've been extracted, and like the Helm relies on the user to install the Helm binary themselves and to provide extra flags to allow us to shell out to it. And the go-getter was wholesale removed when we upgraded to Kustomize 4.0. So yeah, they're problematic because of the extent of them, among other reasons.
The size was one scope of the problem, and the other one was the licenses of the transitive dependencies that were being brought in, which were not compatible with the licenses allowed by the Linux Foundation for the Kubernetes project. So we had issues that some of the dependencies that were being brought in were just not compatible. So both the scope and the licensing was the main issue.
So Kustomize is imported into kubectl, and so any of its dependencies end up being dependencies of kubectl. And we have strict limits, having spent significant amount of time refactoring kubectl to put it into staging. And that entire process was about cleaning up dependencies so that kubectl can be pulled out of Kubernetes. So that's also one reason.
Are there any other questions for the two proposals? Yeah, Eddie linked in the chat for those interested in the PR. I'm guessing that's the bump kubectl, customizing kubectl. It has all the details with all the information, and probably links all the libraries and issues that were solved on the path towards upgrading, customizing kubectl. Okay, I'm hearing none. With that, I think we can move over to the stand-ups. Customize. Katrina, I guess.
The biggest thing that I wanted to share was those kept, so I guess I've already done it. I'm just trying to switch gears in my brain and see like what else have we done lately. Nothing comes to mind. That was the biggest thing that I personally was working on, and I don't see anyone else here from the team today.
Okie doke. Sean, CLI details.
Yeah, so I just wanted to spend 2 minutes to bring the SIGs and the community's attention to some of the apply library development that's been going on in the CLI utils. And so this link that I put there is the closest that exists to documentation. So, apologies for not having much, but I thought it was much more important to make sure that we surface this sooner rather than later. It's basically a wrapper around kube control apply. And so I just mentioned earlier how we spent a significant amount of effort into refactoring kube control to put it into staging. And that allows us to reuse kube control code. And so what this is kind of an experiment to see how we could reuse the kube control apply. And so this library wraps kube control apply, and there's a couple of experiments to add some functionality to kube control apply, so kube control apply prune is problematic and has many issues. It's been alpha for years, and so there's an experiment to try to implement a different type of pruning. But anyway, the TLDR is just that there's some apply library development, and if you're interested, if that's your jam, please contact me. And the next time we actually do have some decent documentation, then I'll bring it up again, and you'll be able to actually see some documentation instead of just some code. If there's no questions, I'll let Nick talk about CUI.
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
How does this relate to kept live apply? Is that related?
Yeah, it is actually. So the kept live apply imports parts of this library.
Okay, hearing no other questions. Nick.
Hello. Yeah, two quick things. I realized just right now the link I put there for the survey is not correct. I'll fix that. Sorry about that. Pasted the wrong. And the link is valid. That's actually, if you want more detail on the study, you can read that, but that's probably boring. So the first thing is that you remember Cora Coleman, we had a summer intern who was doing some UX research into all the kubectl tooling, basically, OpenShift console, kubectl, CUI, trying to figure out if we can craft a story around that. And so as part of that, we thought this would already been prior art, but a study of what tools do people actually prefer to use for various kinds of tasks, CRUD tasks, debugging tasks, monitoring tasks. We thought that would be a published survey on this already, what people actually prefer to use kubectl, and we couldn't find anything. The CNCF, Red Hat, we couldn't find any existing studies. If you guys know of any, let me know. But what we have started is in the absence of that, a study of asking those questions. So it's a quick 2-minute survey. We've contacted SIG Usability yesterday to see whether we could sort of publicize this under their auspices. They seem interested. I'll fix the link if you guys have time, maybe submit your preferences. The hope is that we can start driving some actual, some actual improvements based on people's hardcore preferences. Second quick thing is will present CUI at DevX. I will be there virtually, not in person, but I have to finish up the video by Saturday. So just two quick things, that's all. I'll fix the link now.
Yeah, I was trying to fix the link, but I lost the correct one. I don't know where I have it. Okay, so thanks a lot, Nick.
Sure, yeah, I got it now. I'll paste it in.
Cool.
On that note, Nick, you make me remember, Sean, did we ever think further about getting people to like give us their usage header logs anonymously somehow and doing that?
So you're talking about this in regards to the kube control command headers that are now beta. Is that what?
Yeah.
So I don't think that there has been any efforts on the API server logging to surface that. I talked to Daniel Smith of the API machinery, and he said he was interested in sending those headers also to validating and mutating webhooks. But to be honest, I'm not aware of a whole lot of work done elsewhere to surface those headers.
One of the things that's driving this is that you guys may have different experience in your companies, but the experience I've had with the companies I've been with is that from a design perspective, there's a huge amount of effort put behind the consoles for good reasons. Those are definitely valid use cases, but what we tend to find is that the more seasoned you get with Kubernetes, the more you gravitate towards the CLI. And so that's an anecdotal observation. So we wanted to see whether that was substantiated in the large. So was part of the motivation for the survey. If it indeed is the case, the anecdotal evidence plays out, I think hopefully that can help inform some of our companies in terms of where to start directing effort. I think, as you can see by the size of this community here, right, it's pretty small, but relative to the size of the community it supports, it's an interesting ratio relative to the ratios you see for the console development. So we wanted to substantiate some of that with an actual survey. I was surprised that information was lacking in the literature, but couldn't find anything.
And I wonder if we should also talk to CNCF because they do their yearly study. And actually, I think it's bi-yearly now. They're doing two.
I was super surprised. I read their survey asks a lot of good questions, but it asks nothing at the level of detail of what you actually, the daily driver questions, right? What do you actually use from a tooling perspective? And nothing, even remotely close. And there's 2020, the latest one I found. Very surprising.
I mean, honestly, if you think about it, kubectl from the kubectl standpoint, or literally any other, every GUI, whether that be web-based or a standalone application, it will be pretty opinionated about certain things, about the flow, about how they do stuff. At some point in time, you will want to regain the control for the cost of, yes, it will take me a little bit more typing. But if I'm spending 90% of my time with my keyboard and my console window, I somehow lean towards using the CLI tools.
There's definitely that control part of it, which is really important. I think interestingly, I found Core also ran a second study, which we'll get this all up there very soon. But the second study was trying to actually trying to quantify those kinds of questions about, is the preference more a question of, sort of a cerebral question of control, grabbing back control, which is an important one, or is kubectl actually somehow more optimal from an actual sort of a effort perspective? So I don't know if you guys actually use consoles, because probably none of us use them very much because we're all on the seasoned end of the spectrum. But if you actually try to use something like the OpenShift console for some fairly straightforward tasks, the number of clicks, the number of actual operations you have to perform to do fairly straightforward tasks is pretty high, and actually it's higher than what you have to do for kubectl. So it's sort of an interesting twist. That, anyway, so I just want to inform the design community, because I think they're operating kind of in a bit of their own little silo. I just wanted to bring them into this discussion. I think these kinds of surveys would help that. Anyway, I've talked enough.
Yeah, I'll be very curious about learning the results from the survey, both from personal interest and from the SIG CLI perspective as well.
Great. Yeah, so I linked the survey there. I think I updated the in the meeting notes as well. So, and I think Tasha Drew from SIG Usability said we can write a blog. We can get some maybe get some extra publicity on that end from the top down.
If I remember correctly, it was sent out to the Kubernetes dev mailing list earlier today or yesterday. I was going through the mailing list earlier today, and I did notice that I already filled it because I got the link from somewhere else.
Nice.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So maybe Tasha is already doing us justice. Thank you.
Yeah, that apparently she is, but that still, I think we should be able to push the survey even further outside of the Kubernetes community.
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to get this information nailed down. Okay, thank you.
Thank you
I
very
guess
much,
one thing
Nick.
I'll say on that is, like, I came from a fairly large company, as a consumer of Kubernetes and OpenShift, and the one thing that I'll say, having been part of establishing some of the training for the people within the organization who use it, the consoles are really good for new people coming in and like trying to understand the concepts and sort of the structure, how the different pieces fit together. But yeah, as soon as everybody understands that, it's immediately go use kubectl. Because because you're just going to have to use that anyway to do any sort of automation. So you might as well just get used to it, and that's what everybody got trained on for the most part.
Yeah, just even from a learning perspective, there's sort of really interesting ironies here that the best way to learn is often by mimicking, right? By copying and pasting someone else's. And you can't copy and paste into a graphical console. So I think I really wanted to just substantiate some of these anecdotal evidence so we can actually sort of drive some richer discussions with these console teams to see whether, I don't know, anyway, I think that investments are inordinate with the returns. So that's personal opinion.
Okay. Are there any last minute stand-ups, topics, questions, or anything that you want to share with the rest of the group?
Natasha reached out to the replicated folks who own kubectl.io and Customize.io. So we're on an email thread with them, and they are going to be transferring those to the CNCF. So I'm working with Bob to get the service desk ticket put in, but we will soon have those domains.
Amazing. That's great.
Thanks to them for being very kind and generous.
Okay. Thank you very much, friends. That was another fruitful meeting from SIG CLI. See you next week for Blockerbug, if I remember correctly. Eddie is running the Blockerbug next week. Is that so? Yeah, that's about right time. Okay, see you next week. Thank you very much, all. Bye.